So welcome to this week's Optimum Health Clinic Facebook Live. And this week I wanted to talk about something which is often a little bit sensitive, and it isn't always the easiest thing to find our way with when we're on a path to recovery from ME chronic fatigue fibromyalgia. And yet I think it's one of the things that can be actually surprisingly helpful and supportive. And that's the value and the purpose of gratitude. And it can seem like an odd thing to be talking about being grateful for what we have in our lives when there's clearly so much that we feel like we've lost. And, you know, it's also important to allow ourselves to feel the feelings of grief and loss and sadness and the places where we can be longing for things in our life that are not the way they were before. And yet, that can also be a trap. And that can be a place where we spend a lot of our time focusing on the way that our life was before versus the way that our life is now, and we long to be back the way we were before. And what that leads to is a constant sense of frustration and a sense of focus on the things that we don't have and the things that we can't do. The other thing I think that happens is that it means that we're longing to be back as the person that we were before, but that's also living in the way that caused us to get sick. And so it's almost like we're trying to take ourselves back rather than a support in moving forwards, in progressing to become the person which is obviously healthy and well, but living in the world in the way that is reflective of the life that we're building and moving towards. And one of the things that made me think about this is just, you know, a lot's been happening in London and the UK over recent weeks, between the attack in Manchester, the two attacks in London, and then the tower block fire in West London last night and today. And it's interesting when we look at our life and we compare ourselves to other people, because if we're comparing ourselves to our kind of idealized version of ourselves, where we're completely well and able to do all the things that we want to be able to do, then we feel like we've lost everything and we feel kind of sad about our life. If we're comparing ourselves to people which have got life-changing injuries, or have lost their life, or have lost everything that's kind of in their life, or lost loved ones, then suddenly our situation looks different. And it kind of reminds me of something that was a helpful realization for me on my own kind of path of recovery, and also has helped me at other points in my life beyond that period as well, which is if you imagine life of a continuum of lives, where you've got on one hand the one person of the, whatever it is, 7 billion people on earth, the one person that's got the very worst life. Depends on how we value good and bad, but anyway, let's say that you could do it that way, the very worst life, and the one person that's got the very best life. The other 600, whatever it is, 6,999,000,000, whatever the number is, have got someone that's got a better life and people that have got a worse life. And we can focus in either of those directions. And it is important, of course, when we've had loss and we are going through an emotional healing process of digesting and processing what's happened to us. Of course, it's important to feel the feelings and the impact of that. That's a key ingredient to be able to be in our body. And for our body to heal, we have to be in our body, obviously. And yet, it can also be a very useful practice to remember the things in our life that we can be grateful for. You know, another way to look at that in the context of recovery is if we're going for a crash or we're going for a bad few days, if we are ultimately on a path of improvement, to rather than focus on how bad we feel on those days, to focus on that we don't feel as bad as we did perhaps the last time we crashed, that we can actually to actively focus on the progress that's been made, as opposed to focus on the fact that in that day or those few days we're not feeling so good. Obviously, if we're in a completely stuck place, we're not progressing and moving, or things are getting worse, that needs attention and it needs to be dealt with. But if we are on an upward path in the kind of progressive improvements, then we can actively be grateful for and focus on that progress. And there's something about gratitude and appreciation, which shifts a lot psycho-emotionally. It tends to calm our nervous system. It tends to make us feel more positive. It tends to make us be kinder and more gentle towards other people. And of course, the more kind and gentle we are towards other people in our life, the more of that tends to come back at us in our life as well. So it kind of, to take it to a kind of practical point, it kind of leaves the question of what could we be if we wanted to be grateful for something, what could we be grateful for today? Like, what is there in our life that is, there may be many things that are not yet how we want them to be, and many things that have changed from how they were before, and we feel some emotion around that. But despite all of that, this is not to reject or negate that, but despite all of that, what could we be grateful for? And maybe there's 3, 4, 5 things we could think about that we could be actively grateful for. And I know that someone in the group has been doing a kind of Monday gratitude, which I think is a good thing to be doing. And maybe you guys want to post underneath the video things that you could be grateful for. And remembering what I was saying about this kind of continuum, that there are obviously people that have an easier life, and hopefully you're moving more towards that. But there are also people in worse situations. And that doesn't mean you should look at those people and then make yourself wrong for your emotions. Go, well, they're much worse off than you, therefore how dare you feel sorry for yourself. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about absolute permission to feel your emotions and your inner critic just leaving you alone. But in terms of how your mind is focusing, actively being grateful for the things that you've got. Because otherwise what happens is everything changes and we get better and we move forwards, and then we're focusing on the next set of things that we want. And if we never find a relationship to being appreciative and grateful for what's there in our life now, we never actually fully bodily experience it. And so it's never actually satisfying. We always need more because we're not actually feeling the gratitude and the appreciation for the life that we have. In fact, one of the things which is fascinating is when someone's been ill with ME, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia for a period of time, is that first 6 to 12 months on the other side of recovery, they often have huge amounts of gratitude for the most simple things in their life, because in a sense, they haven't been able to do all these things, and now they can do them, but things as basic as, for example, if you saw the documentary film, both Jess and David were quite emotional when they were talking about just being able to do the school run, something as basic and fundamental that anyone that has kids who has health completely takes for granted and probably often is a bit grumpy about having to do sometimes. And it's like something as simple as that, we start to feel huge gratitude for it. And yeah, hi Sharon, Karen's saying, I'm bad at that. I feel guilty for feeling low compared to what some others are going through. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to notice and be aware of. Because what actually is happening in that instance is that you're making yourself feel wrong. And as a result of that, you're just suffering more and feeling even worse about your situation. And no one's benefiting from that. So yes, you can be grateful, but you can also be loving and compassionate towards yourself. And be aware of the inner critic that's always judging and saying, you're complaining, you're being victim. It's possible to absolutely feel a place of kindness and gentleness and tenderness, support towards yourself, and to feel grateful for the things that you've got. So though it doesn't have to be the case that if you're feeling grateful, your feelings and emotions are wrong. You can absolutely hold both of those places. It might take some practice, it might not be easy, but you can absolutely do that. Nicola says that she's grateful that her energy levels seem to be rising, sleeping a lot less during the day, and not having payback because of it, that's great to hear. Good job. So yeah, something that someone mentioned was to perhaps try and keep these videos a little bit more short and succinct. So rather than doing 20, 30 minutes, to try and keep them a bit more kind of soundbitey. And also feel free to comment on that if you'd like to see shorter or longer videos. So yeah, feel free to comment under the video, both in terms of anything you want to share of your experience, what you feel grateful for, what topics you'd like to see in these videos, if you'd like to see them longer or shorter. I hope that's been useful, and thank you for watching.